Good afternoon, everyone. Let's get started. So before we start, just a quick poll. So how many people are no observability? I know like the previous session was very deep, and I feel like now we did a reverse. So mine is more high level. I'm not going into any demo. I'm not going into any workshop kind of thing. So yeah, but just how many of you already using observability and like familiar with that before coming here? Okay, okay. And how many of you are like system engineering or DevOps background and okay, and rest are like developers? Oh, okay, okay, great. So yeah, so I'm going to talk about the observability in the cloud native space and how and why we should use OpenTelemetry. So little bit of about myself. I'm Sudhir Singh, and I'm like co-founder and CEO at Cloud Builders. I have around 20 plus experience in IT, almost like 12 years in cloud and DevOps, right? With observability, I would say like I'm also pretty new. I started like exploring this like maybe a couple of years back when one of our customers, we felt like, okay, monitoring is not enough, right? We need to do something better, right? So when we started getting those kind of problems, we say, oh, this is the solution. Let's try this, right? So yeah, a little bit about Cloud Builders. We are like a cloud consulting services company. We are small, but we are growing slowly. We do like a consulting work in DevOps, CI/CD, infrastructure automation, and all those things. So today, my goal is to give you like, okay, what is observability and why you should use it. I'm not going into how part. I think already it was covered earlier with one tool, and there are many other tools. But my focus is that you should use OpenTelemetry whenever you are going for observability, and I'll give the reason why you should use OpenTelemetry and not a vendor tool, because OpenTelemetry is now a lot mature, and it gives you a lot of inbuilt features, and you can use it with any of your tools also, but it makes sense to use OpenTelemetry if you're using observability. So my goal is to just give you enough motivation that you know what is observability and OpenTelemetry, and you go and figure it out how to implement it, right? So I'll give you that just a bit of it. So why observability, right? Like I just said, like we also started exploring it like some time back, and like any outage cost a lot to the business, right? So everybody knows that, and everybody's you can fix the outage. You can be online, or you can do an RCA, but it's always better to know what is your health of the system. To know that, okay, something might happen before it happens, right? So I always tell my team that, okay, you need to build your monitoring or observability in such a way that we get to know before our customer calls us, right? So before our customer calls and say, oh, this service is not working, or I'm not able to do this, use this feature, we should know that, and we should be working on fixing that. So that's where the observability helps you, right? It helps you in spotting or getting to know the potential issues before it becomes an incident. So now why you can't just work with monitoring, or why we need to go into another observability, need to set up the observability, or maybe pay for another tool, right? Because now more and more people are building cloud native applications, right? And cloud native is completely distributed. You don't have a single application and a database, right? You have a microservices, you have maybe functions like lambdas running, right? And then this whole thing is like anything can be a problem in this, right? So you need something which traces all together, right? Like the complete path, and then you need somewhere you get everything together, right? Aggregation. and then you need metrics also. So that observability is critical when you are building cloud native, right? It might not be critical for a monolith application or a simple applications, but it's very critical to implement observability when you are when you are building a cloud native application. So what is observability, right? So if you see this picture, right, there is a two parts of it. So if you see the top, it is just a tip of iceberg, right? So the total iceberg is pretty big, but what you see is from outside is just the tip, right? Now that is what you see when you just do the monitoring, right? So the monitoring give you the tip of the iceberg. I mean the things when it happens, right? Observability will let you see the complete iceberg from outside, right? So you can see inside the water how big is your problem by looking from the outside. That's what is observability. That's what is no, observability will enable you to see more, right? So so basically, when you are running your application in runtime, you cannot really see that inside the runtime, right? You need something from outside to know the insides of your application, to know how your system digital health is, how it is behaving, right? Is it there is a SRE4 golden principle like no latency, error rate, no all. So how do you get to measure those four things is what observability enables you, right? To get to the observability, right, you need to use instrumentation. You need to have your application code instrumented either automatically or using some programming, right, using in your code, and that will enable your code to emit three types of signals. So it's either it's a traces, metrics, and logs, right? So these is three kinds of signals your application can send, and then you can basically generate these signals. You can collect these signals and then process it and send it to a backend, right? So like you can use any backend where you can collect it and then analyze it. You can have kind of alerting mechanism based on this. You can build a dashboard for a real-time analytics, or you can set up some threshold. You can build a kind of a alerting mechanism to send you the alerts. So with all this observability, where the OpenTelemetry fits in, right? So before OpenTelemetry, there is a lot of tools available. There are commercial tools available. New Relic is very famous, right? So and everybody maybe most of you might have heard about it. So the problem with this market is that there are so many tools, right? And then everyone has their own standards. Right? Everyone has their own way to instrument the code. There is everyone has their own way to collect it, process it. So everyone will claim that theirs is better, right? Now, OpenTelemetry is like a standard. Right? It's an industry standard. It's open source. It become a vendor neutral observability framework where you can use the OpenTelemetry to instrument your code, to generate, collect, and process these signals. Like there are three signals like traces, logs, and metrics. As I said, that with modern applications like the cloud native applications, it's you might be using containers, you might be using microservices, function, right? All these things you can use OpenTelemetry to instrument your code, instrument your applications, and generate these signals. I can give you an analogy between OpenTelemetry, right, to understand where the OpenTelemetry fits into this whole this space. It's like a Kubernetes for container orchestration, right? So everybody is now using Kubernetes, right, for any container orchestration. although that Kubernetes, you use a particular implementation like a AWS, a EKS or Azure or any, there are like 30 plus Kubernetes implementations, but ultimately any application you develop or any your container can run on any of these platforms because all are standards, all are using Kubernetes. So that's the same analogy here, right? So if you use OpenTelemetry to instrument your code, right, it's vendor neutral, right? You can use any other vendor to integrate it, any other tool to integrate it as a backend, or in this whole space. So yeah, again, one more question, like, why OpenTelemetry, right? OpenTelemetry gives you an option that where you own the data. So your application is generating signals, that's your data, right? Now, if you are using OpenTelemetry, the data is standard, right? It is following a protocol. That is you own, right? It's not that, like, if you are using a vendor specific tool, the data is in vendor format, right? You cannot take the data and port it into another tool or another another backend. Now, when you are using OpenTelemetry, it's your data, right? It is in the format which you can use it. There is no vendor lock-in. And the best part is that you have to learn only a single set of APIs and single set of standards. You don't need to go and learn each and every vendor specific APIs, their tools, and their their standards. Sorry. Okay, so sure. So I said, like, there are signals which is like your code is sending the signals which is what the OpenTelemetry, the purpose of the OpenTelemetry is to collect and process and store these, export and store these signals. There are three types of signals. First one is traces. So traces help you understand the path, right? It's like if you're running a distributed application, so a request is coming, how the request went through different hops, right? Like, maybe you have a one microservice which is doing an order, and then after order it is going to inventory, and then there is a payment, right? So there are different microservices you might be using, and then your request is just going through all of these, right? How do you get a single connection or a single correlation between all these microservices for a same request? That is where the traces will help, right? So if you use observability and OpenTelemetry, you can generate these traces, and then you can correlate the same request, right? How it performed across the different microservices. Metrics, right? So metrics is like a measurement of a particular service or a particular value, right? It could be any measurement, like it could be your application memory, right? So how much memory it is consuming, how much CPU it is consuming, or if you are running a container, like maybe it's a container number of restarts or how long it has been running, right? So it can be any value, and it can be aggregated like over a period of time, or it's like a any measurement. Logs are like pretty standard. It's like your application might be generating some logs, right? You have your application code which is writing the logs. You can redirect that log, or like your dependencies might have some logs, right? So that's the log you can get generated, and it can be exported. Okay, so let's talk about some of the what is OpenTelemetry contain, how we kind of use it, right? Like if you are a developer or a DevOps and you want to use this, right? What are the different pieces you need to know and how you will work with that? So the first part of OpenTelemetry is like their specifications. Like they have a APIs means like your interfaces, right? SDKs and the protocol, right? So so this part here, you say this is what is inside your application, right? So if you are like instrumenting, right, you might use an API or you might use SDK or both, and then there are some language specific APIs and SDKs, right, which helps in automatic instrumentation, export. So there are exporters. So this is like which helps in collecting and exporting the the signals or the from the OpenTelemetry from your application. So, and then the last piece is the collector, right, which is like data aggregator or filtering, right? So the collector is like getting the data from different applications, and then it exports it to in a backend, right? So backend is like you can use any third-party application or like Prometheus or Elasticsearch or any other tool which can help you in like storing these signals, storing this data, and then like analyzing it. You get a real-time dashboard or all kinds of metrics. You can build your alerting system there, right? So these are the like pieces in the OpenTelemetry. So I just try to capture like how you can use OpenTelemetry for different personas, right? So if you are the operations person, you are like managing a workload in production, and you want to capture different matrices, right? Different signals. Basically, you want to monitor your application, right? Then how you can use OpenTelemetry. So there is an automatic instrumentation available, right? That is available for .NET, Java, JavaScript, PHP, right? These languages are supported. You can get a automatic instrumentation. Basically, it's like you can get the signals, or you can get the trace, log, and metrics out of your application without changing the code of the application. So that's what the automatic instrumentation will do. It will if you are using any of these programming languages, you can just get your code automatically instrumented. You can take their SDKs, or you can take their binaries, run with your application, and then you're good to go. The one thing you have to do is like you have a collector which is kind of collecting all the signals. Then it has to configure to your backend, right? So your where you store the data, where you store or do the analytics. So that's the configuration you have to do. If you are a developer and if you are writing a new code and you want to get some data out of it, I remember like when before observability, when I was writing the code, maybe around 10 years back, right? So we build like our own system to kind of generate these traces, metrics. So we write our own code inside our Java code, right? So like a kind of a SOP or like loggers to collect the data, right? So it's like, okay, request is coming, we have a log, right? Which logs the data, right? So it says, okay, yeah, we got one, counter two, right? I mean, that was like very, very manual, right? It's like, it also affects sometimes like the performance, right? Because I'm just adding a extra compute to the whole operation. And then we had like a different microservices. So we build our own context and started adding into those requests, so that we know that how that things are happening. Now with this, I can see that I don't need to do anything, and we can just automatically get those those features available. And like if I have to build now, I can just use these SDKs, APIs, and just do this instrumentation, right? So whenever I have to do this, right, I can take their APIs and then just write my code, right? Okay, so these are the use cases where we can use OpenTelemetry, we can use observability, right? The best part is application performance monitoring, right? Uh, how your application is performing, what is your response time, all those things. Also, it helps in identifying the areas where it could be a problem, right? So the second part is like your infrastructure monitoring, like your CPU, memory, all other things like networking related things. I just said like it helps in the root cause analysis, that if something goes wrong, we know that where it went wrong. So this is the summary. I'll just open up for questions. If you guys have any questions, we can take the questions now. So,
how do you fare compared with CloudTrail and CloudWatch?
sorry?
How do you fare this tool versus CloudTrail and CloudWatch?
Okay, so your question is like how is different from CloudTrail and CloudWatch,
Yeah,
right?
we already have that.
Yeah, right. So yes, so CloudTrail and CloudWatch is AWS service, which is more like a monitoring, right? So CloudTrail is a different kind of thing. It's like a more like a your logs, right? CloudWatch, where you can push your logs, you can see all those things, but it doesn't provide you the observability, right? Actually, you can use the CloudWatch as a backend, right? So all your if you instrument your code, right, you generate these signals, you can use CloudWatch as your backend. So where data goes, like these traces, these logs can go to the CloudWatch. So CloudWatch can fit into this, right? CloudWatch can be a backend, right? In fact, we use it, and even AWS has a OpenTelemetry distro. So if you are like running Kubernetes in AWS, right, you can use that. And then once you use that, it will automatically generate these pod related metrics, like what is your pod health. And I mean, there are so many metrics, and then it goes to the CloudWatch. And then you can start like looking at that data from CloudWatch.
How is the automated instrumentation implemented? Is it scanning the logs, or is it injecting itself into the HTTP pipeline to collect the information that it actually sends to the collector?
So it is looking. So it's automating instrumentation is that it is like in case of like a container, it is running as a sidecar or it's running as another container, and then it looks at the HTTP request, right? Because HTTP request is one metric. It is like one part of it. So there are other metrics, right? So it's looking at your infrastructure. It's looking at your logs also. So it's not kind of looking at your logs. It's like getting injected into your code, and then it's like a looking at your code, like code at the runtime, and then capturing those values. So it's part of your runtime.
So is it part of my deployment? And I'll run a continuous integration re-instrumentation of my code as it gets deployed?
So your question is like how it gets deployed along with your code, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's like you put it as part of CI/CD. You can right. It basically it depends on like what kind of instrumentation you are doing. It's like you're using automatic or you're using manual. So if you are doing manual, it's like you are writing code inside your code, right? Then there is no CI/CD, right? It is part of your code. But if you are doing like automatic, then it has to be deployed, right? So yeah, you can include it as a part of your CI/CD that gets deployed. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think are some challenges to adoption?
Adoption of what?
OpenTelemetry. Like, what do you think are some of the major challenges to adoption, if any?
see, basically, it's like no, there are many challenges, and I know you guys are like the providing the back end, right? So it's see, basically for me, it's like the biggest challenge is like the getting the information, right? Like like the learning curve, right? So knowing that there is something which I can use, right? So everybody like when you try to do observability, you go towards more like these tools, right? New Relic or other tools, like so you don't get to know about OpenTelemetry. It's not very popular, right? It's not like considered as an option, and like there are not much material where you can you can understand it, and so that was my biggest kind of our biggest challenge, right? So it's, yeah. Okay, so we have to stop here. We are Cloud Builders booth. So if you have any other further questions, just stop by. Okay, thank you.